Before we begin, since this is a BBC-owned property, I feel the need to point out that the news arm of the BBC has a continuing issue with transphobic leanings in its news coverage. You can find in a pinned comment below various videos from both myself and other YouTubers covering this issue. And while I understand that the Doctor Who creative team is not responsible for this, I will continue to point this out for as long as it remains a consistent issue. Thank you.
Drink up, me hearties, yo-ho! We are almost done with my rewatch of the 13th Doctor's era, which will actually have me properly caught up. I will not even consider doing a rewatch of anything that airs from the point at which I end up finishing this next week until after, at the very least, the end of Ncuti Gatwa's era, however many seasons that goes. Like, I don't want to be doing... but for me, part of the reason to revisit and do the Take Two reviews is you're looking at it with the perspective of, and this era is wrapped up, so let's reassess it, knowing everything that goes on. So that's my current stance. I'm sure some people will, within a year, be nudging me to see if I'll do a Take Two on the David Tennant specials that are coming out. My intention right now is no. But anyways, that's talking about the future. Let's talk about the present, or the past, because this is an episode from over a year ago. Whatever. Legend of the Sea Devils. Now, this is a pretty maligned episode, is the general impression that I have gotten. And I kind of get why, but I also don't hate it. This is one of those things where, I'm not really gonna defend it, but I don't have that much investment in heaping hate onto it. There's a couple things I'm gonna bring up, point out, and highlight, but by and large, the thing is, I think there's one major thing hampering anybody's potential enjoyment of this, especially at the time that it aired, which is that there's no reason for this to be a special. It's not in any way picking up on any of the stuff that happened at the end of Series 13 or the end of Series 12 for that matter. It's not really running a through line from the previous episode. It's not even really loading the bases for Power of the Doctor coming up. It's just a very standard episode. But it's a standard episode masquerading as a special, despite the fact that it has no additional length, no additional scope, doesn't tie into anything else. So even though it is technically a special, I just don't think of it like one. I think of this as a standard episode because that's what it is. This is incredibly standard. And I'll also admit I am inclined to be slightly gentler on this than I might otherwise be for the same reason I was slightly gentler on The Black Spot. I like pirates. I like the feel, the adventure, the aesthetic. I like pirate stories. I just do. So anything that's kind of going in for that, you get a bit of benefit of the doubt from me that other people might not give it. And the thing is, this is one of those episodes, or reviews rather, of an episode that could end up being really short. Because it basically amounts to, I still kind of have fun with it, but it's not that great. And honestly, I could probably leave it there. That's basically how everything's going to be summed up in the end. I'll point out some specific stuff. The thing is, as I go, I'm going to sound more negative on it than I intend to, partially because the stuff that is kind of nice is not that great, and the stuff that is easier to talk about are some of the problems. So I'll end up dwelling much more on the stuff that doesn't work, but I don't hate this. I don't love it. I don't hate this. It's just an episode. It's just a bog standard episode. And I really think if it wasn't masquerading as a special, I think people would have been kinder to it. But, like I said, pirates, also sea devils, who I also kind of like. I'm not sure they've ever had a really great story. Their first story is their best one with John Pertwee. But having revisited that a little while back on the secondary channel, Break Room of Geeks, I found that does not hold up quite as well as my memory had it. It's a little bloated, but it's still decent. I still kind of like them. And I like that this design is not a rework. This is basically the same design. The only real difference that they do is they have just a little motion tweening on the face, not even like to simulate mouth movement, because he's got like the glowing thing to indicate like that's translating for him or something, but like sort of implying pulsing within the mouth or in the throat. And the effect doesn't look great. I mean, that's another thing. This episode doesn't look especially good. I think a lot of it was the hampering of still shooting under COVID, because especially like some of the action scenes, there's a lot of really awkward close-ups, and there's a distinct lack of any long shots where there are multiple characters in a frame, which I suspect was just a side effect of COVID and having to shoot under lockdown, which I'm pretty sure this had to do. So, and I mean, if I've got my timing wrong on that, which I don't think I do, but if I do, well, then they just didn't do a good job. But, there is some recurrence of some things I've complained about Chibnall before. We have, as soon as our main villain version of a Sea Devil gets free from that statue, he just goes about massacring this village when there's no need for him to do that. Like, there's a need for him to kill the guy's father and motivate that guy's story. Fine. But like, he wipes out a huge section of the village and there's like bodies lying around. I'm like, why? Just have them run. Like, there's no need for, again, sort of the needless level of violence. Although it doesn't suffer from part of what has really ticked me off about Chibnall doing that before, which is that let's take a second to characterize these people just enough where it feels like knife twisting. He didn't do that here. It is just fodder. This is cannon fodder, but it is pointless cannon fodder. So there's that. We have Madam Ching. Well, that's sort of the main thing she's referred to here. The historical figure Zheng Yi Sao, which I may have butchered, and I apologize. Now, she's a very cool person, and I'm not sure this is a particularly great representation of her. Now, I don't necessarily mean like betraying her, personality. I don't know enough about her to make a call on that, and that's not really my place. But what I will say is, like, from what I know of her, it's weird to stick her in for a sort of swashbuckling, direct action captain kind of pirate role. Because she was a fleet commander. She wasn't getting in there with a sword, swinging it to take over ship herself. She commanded a fleet. And she pretty much started at that level because she inherited that fleet from her husband, who had been, kind of a pirate lord. She inherited it from him when he died. So she was top of the pyramid kind of leader. She was commanding the troops. She was sending fleets out to do stuff. She wasn't piloting ships herself, at least not so far as I am aware. So it is a little bit odd that they went with her as opposed to like literally any other pirate, even any other female pirate who might have fit that better in terms of what they actually historically did. And again, I don't want to necessarily say that that's like a besmirching or a dishonoring of the historical figure. It just struck me as a little bit odd. What I do think might count as a little bit of a besmirching of the historical figure is there's this big emphasis on this other guy, Ji Hun from several hundred years previous, who I don't think was real. Like, I couldn't find evidence of this guy. Like, any search I tried to do just brought me right back to this episode. So if he's a real historical figure who's just there's so much less known about him that the Doctor Who version has supplanted whatever real information is out there in like a Google search or what have you, then if that's the case, I apologize. But I don't think it is. And not only does it feel like he gets more highlights, he gets like these weird, heavy praising things like, "You truly are a legend." That kind of stuff usually gets reserved for the actual historical figures. That felt a little off and a little weird. I still like her being there because I think the actress that they got has a good sense of presence and a good charisma. And again, I do still like a pirate archetype character, even if Madam Ching is maybe not the best fit for the kind of pirate archetype they're going for. But whatever. This is my generalized knowledge. Maybe they did deep research and there's a lot more precedent for the way they chose to do it. I honestly don't know, but this is just my understanding as a layperson who is not a historian, just somebody who likes pirates. We have, I want to say, a continuation of the Yasmin and Doctor thing, but barely. There's this scene at the bottom of the ocean where, you know, the Doctor just kind of let slip casually.
Not a bad day, am I?
And then, you know, Yaz gets all weird and the Doctor gets a little weird. So, like, this is kind of the confirmation that the Doctor is not blind to the connection that exists between them. She's just not dealing with it. And I will say that later when they have their one-on-one conversation about it, it works better than my memory. It basically amounts to like a very tried and true explanation for any kind of immortal loner, which is that
But if I do fix myself to somebody, I know sooner or later it'll hurt.
normally I'd kind of call like that's such a tropey basic answer for this, except I actually kind of buy it from her because she's been unusually distant from her companions for her entire run. I actually personally kind of feel it's a little bit, at least from me, a bit of a criticism of the era that she doesn't build a deeper connection really with any of them. She seems reserved in that way. And when I say criticism for me, I don't mean it's necessarily bad. It's just something I don't like because I really hone in on the Doctor companion dynamic, and when it's not as firm or as deep, it feels like the show's missing something. But knowing she hasn't had that real deep connection with any of them, this answer comes off less like the kind of cop-out it might have otherwise, and more like an explanation for retroactively explaining why she hasn't let any of them in, Yaz or anyone else. And her admitting to that now is about as close as she's going to come to letting Yaz in. And in a way, it kind of reminds me of that moment that so many other people hate, but I think is good, with the episode Can You Hear Me, where she's with Graham, where she says,
I should say a reassuring thing now, shouldn't I? I'm still quite socially awkward. So I'm just going to subtly walk towards the console. In a minute, I'll think of something that I should have said.
Where I've always read that scene as her letting him in on why she's about to do the somewhat distanced, somewhat awkward, not ideal thing that she's about to do. She can't stop herself from doing the thing, but she can let him in on what it is she's about to do, and like to basically be aware that I know this is not the ideal response, but this is still what I'm going to do. And this moment with Yaz rings a little bit like that. This sort of, I can't give you what you want. What I can do is explain to you why. And that seems about the best that this particular Doctor is able to do as far as opening up. And so that scene I actually think is decent. The one before that, Under the Sea, is, I don't know, it's a little flat. And also, it's weird because I have to chalk this up to trying to shoot under COVID restrictions and just the way it was staged and they couldn't reshoot stuff. But like, the Doctor is looking down and the whole seabed is like cracking and falling away and like it's loud. And Yaz, it's not indicated that Yaz is like back inside the TARDIS. She's looking out and she's not even looking up. She's just like looking out, and for some reason she doesn't notice this. Like, there's a lot of weird wonkiness like that throughout the thing. But again, I chalk most of that up to COVID shooting. Oh, and there was one other part from the Doctor and Yaz that I quite like, where the Doctor just kind of says,
Can we just live in the present of what we have?
That feels like it captures something that a lot of, not even just Doctor Who, like a lot of shows or movies either don't try to capture or capture poorly, which is that sense from somebody that I love what we have, and I'm not able, either right now or possibly at all, to have it be more than this, but I treasure this so much. Can't we just hold on to this? And as you know, as the other person has indicated, I would like this to be more, but for the Doctors, like I can't, and I just want to keep having this. And it's a very real sense of melancholy that can happen because once you know the other person wants more, it has the tendency to diminish what it is you have now because, they're not completely happy with it. And she's just trying to hold on to what it is they do have. And again, I think that's well captured in the performance. I don't have too much else to say. There's the giant sea monster, which I don't get why they didn't call it the Merca. Like, they should have. It gets called something else at some point. It should have just been the Merca. It just should have been. That would have been fun, for fans who know what the heck that is. But it's not for some reason. Actually, you know what? The actor who plays I can't remember the character's name, but the son, the one who initially is out for revenge against Madame Chang and sort of joins along with them, turns out to be an ancestor of one of the crew of Ji-Hun's ship. That guy, he's got a really nice presence. He's got kind of a nice charisma. He's very endearing. I kind of like him. I wish there was more of him. Like, if this had been the length of a proper special, closer to an hour, I think, another 5 minutes development on him, he could have been great. As it is, he's just leaves a better impression than he probably has any right to, considering how not particularly fleshed out the character is. I think the actor just brings a good presence for him. So I like that. Dan continues to be just kind of cute and endearing. And overall, I still have fun with this, largely on the back of loving pirate stuff. I just do. And I'm a sucker for it. Does that make this good? No. No, it's pretty disposable, ultimately. And that's grading on the curve of treating it like a standard episode instead of a special. Viewing it as a special, like, whew. I don't remember the last time I ranked all the specials. Oh, I might have to do that soon. Dang. Well, maybe after the Tenet ones. Or should I do it before the Tenet ones? Like, and rank all the ones that have had, maybe as a lead-in? I don't know. I got to figure that out. I haven't done that in a while, but I have a feeling this is going to be down on the lower end of those. But as a standard episode, it's fun. It's something that I don't feel the need to skip. And that is a very lukewarm endorsement. I do understand that, but I don't hate it. Legend of the Sea Devils. There's your lukewarm endorsement. I didn't hate it. But, given how many people seem to hate it, I think that's about as much praise as it tends to get. What did you think about this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. You know the things, YouTube things, they help. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, for the last time with Whitaker's Doctor, this council is adjourned. And now my thanks to my Patreon supporters that make this possible, including Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, T. Love, Auntie Kate 808, Pranabi Likes the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Dave Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. You can get I get all the names right and then I can't talk. If you want to hear me stumble over my tongue after saying your name, it's in the rewards here on the Patreon.